When a forgotten branch of humanity tried to rewrite the entire galaxy, Earth didn't respond with technology, it responded with will. They came to erase freedom and replace it with perfection, but met something they couldn't calculate: resistance. Humans didn't win with numbers, they won by choosing to fight even when all hope was lost. The victory on Kirin 9 wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a new era where memory proved stronger than design. The galaxy saw that humanity may fall, but it always rises, and teaches others to rise with it. Stay with us if you want to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The sky above Kirin 9 burned a sickly green, the color of surrender. At least, that's what it meant to the Grell. For them, the green flare was a signal of victory. Another world conquered. Another species broken. The people of Kirin had believed their kindness would shield them. That peace would protect them. They were wrong. The Grell ships hovered overhead like vultures crafted from obsidian and wire, blotting out the sun and draining every breath of hope from the air. Their soldiers, eight-limbed creatures with metal-welded flesh, marched through the sacred halls of Kirin's cities, setting shrines ablaze and executing community elders in public squares. The message was clear. No one is coming for you. Inside the obsidian command chamber of the Grell mothership, Commander Vrax stood before a luminous holomap. His talons clicked rhythmically against the smooth surface of the control interface as red lights blinked, each marking a subdued zone. Another world without resistance, he said flatly, disappointment cutting through his usually gleeful tone. No challenge. No glory. No one dares resist the Grell, hissed a subordinate Karrik, voice like cracking glass. They all know what happens when they do. Vrax's black eyes narrowed as he rotated the galactic display. No, he murmured. There is one race that still eludes us. One that remains quiet. Karrik stiffened. Humans, Vrax said. The room fell into silence. Not even the most arrogant Grell officers mocked the name aloud. Humanity was not the most advanced, not the oldest, but they were something far more dangerous, relentless. In ancient reports, they were described not as soldiers but as demons, a force that emerged from fire, chaos, and grief. They didn't conquer. They didn't control. But when they fought, entire wars ended in whispers. They're a dying race, someone sneered, trying to laugh. Always fighting each other. Let them rot. Vrax stared at the icon of Earth on the holomap. Let's hope they stay asleep. But Earth wasn't asleep. Earth was listening. And when the first refugee signals escaped the burning orbit of Kirin 9, weak, cracked, fragmented, it was enough. On Earth, there were no long debates. No drawn-out councils or televised statements. In the shadow of old bunkers and beneath the core of ancient military satellites, the decision was instant. Felt in the marrow of every ex-soldier, every underground command hub, every half-forgotten battalion born in the fires of the old wars. The message went out. 3 words, buried in an ancient Earth cipher. Help is coming. The Grell intercepted it. And they laughed. Human help? What could a fractured, outnumbered world do? They turned their gaze back to Kirin 9. But then the sky cracked. It didn't shimmer. It didn't scream. It split. Reality tore like paper, and from the rift came ships, not sleek and silver like Grell cruisers, but old, battered constructs held together with mismatched hull plating and rusted flag emblems of Terran nations that no longer existed. The first Grell cruiser to intercept one of the inbound vessels was vaporized in 8 seconds. The second survived 12, long enough to send a scream through its comms before it fell into the ocean, boiling the sea around it for miles. Then the humans landed. They didn't send diplomats. They didn't broadcast ultimatums. They marched. Through fire. Through falling steel. Through clouds of ash. Boots pounded against scorched stone. Armor black as night. Helmets reflecting flame and ruin. No insignias. No fancy markings. Just one word, seared into the chestplate of the lead warrior. Earth. And behind them more. Veterans. Mercenaries. Exiles. Ghosts. Humans who had no place in peace, but who belonged to war like a second skin. They didn't fight for conquest. They fought for the ones who couldn't. They fought for the ones who had cried out in vain. And the people of Kirin 9, trembling beneath collapsed towers and beside the bodies of their kin, looked up into the firelight and, for the first time, believed. The Grell didn't understand it, not at first. Not the way the humans moved. Not their strategies or their violence. That came later. What broke them was how humans fought. Like they had nothing left to lose. Like this wasn't just another battle, it was personal. They came like a tide with no moon. They came like wrath-given flesh. And Commander Vrax, staring at the smoke-choked horizon from his orbiting warship, gripped the edges of his console and whispered, "What in the void are they made of?" Karrik didn't answer at first. Then, quiet as death, "They're not like the others." No chain of command? Vrax hissed. "Find their leader. Cut the head. The body dies." But that was their greatest mistake. Because humans had no head. No emperor. No hive. No node. Only warriors. Each one trained to adapt. To survive. To improvise. And to make their enemies pay. The surface of Kirin 9 was aflame, but not with surrender. With defiance. The Grell deployed energy cannons capable of vaporizing stone, but humans didn't fight from behind walls. They moved too quickly, always flanking, always in motion. Where Grell formations relied on grid patterns and strategic drone coordination, humans brought rail guns, EMP grenades, and custom-forged brutality. Colonel Marin Shaw led from the front. Her armor was pitted and scorched from a dozen campaigns: Mars, Titan, Europa. No ornamentation. No rank displayed. Only the hardened silhouette of someone who had bled for too many causes to remember and yet refused to stop. Her voice, sharp and low through squad comms. Alpha, push right. Flommers, clear alleyways. Bravo on me. We're cutting their throat at the center. She didn't shout. There was no room for theatrics in real war. Her tone was the sound of a scalpel slicing through noise. And her soldiers followed. They weren't clean. They weren't pretty. But they were deadly. In one cracked plaza, amidst the remains of a fountain that once honored peace, a young Coronian girl, barely standing on her trembling hooves, looked up at Shaw as she passed. The girl's eyes were wide. Her voice shook. Who are you? Shaw paused only briefly. Turned her helmet slightly toward the child. Earth, she said. We came late. But we don't leave friends behind. Then she raised her rifle and vaporized a Grell walker with a point-blank kinetic burst, sending its scorched limbs spinning into the rubble. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned. And it didn't matter. Where the Grell relied on hierarchy, the humans brought chaos. Where the Grell calculated probability, the humans kicked in the door. They improvised. They bled. And they refused to stop. Corporal Tay Navarro was pinned behind a collapsed statue. Blood poured from a seared wound in his side, but his eyes burned. 3 left, he muttered into his cracked scope. Let's dance. He lunged from cover with a roar, pulled a Grell officer into a chokehold, slammed a combat blade through its eye, and ripped the weapon from its twitching grip. When that ran dry, he used his fists. When those gave out, he bit. When the smoke cleared, Navarro stood alone, laughing. You bastards forgot one thing, he spat into the dust. Humans don't quit. By nightfall, half the capital had been liberated. Earth-drop ships descended where they could. No formation, no ceremony, bringing medics, combat engineers, off-world volunteers. Anyone who had heard the signal and decided, not this time. Not while another world burned. In the ruins of a half-collapsed library, Shaw sat on a fractured bench. Her helmet lay at her feet, face smeared with ash and sweat. Lieutenant Griggs lit a cigarette beside her. His uniform was torn, one eye blackened, but his grin hadn't faded. Think we made a big enough entrance? Shaw exhaled, weary. They thought no one would come. She looked at the flickering skyline, orange with fire. Now they know better. Griggs nodded slowly. The Grell won't forget this. They're not supposed to. Up in orbit, Vrax paced before a tactical display filled with flickering red alerts. His world, once ordered and pristine, was unraveling under him. Human ships shouldn't have been able to punch through their defenses. Human tactics shouldn't have worked. And yet, here they were. They hadn't just fought back. They had awakened something. Vrax snarled. Summon the Warbringers. Karek stiffened. That's a last resort. Then consider this the last. But Earth didn't declare war. Earth became it. And they weren't finished. In the hours before dawn, Kieran 9 went still. Not with peace, but with fear. Not from the citizens this time, but from the Grell. For the first time, the invaders hid in shadow, murmured in low voices. Whispers spread of what the humans were, what they could do, how they fought even after being torn open, how they moved like wolves through shattered buildings, how they didn't break. The Grell had seen war, but they had never seen this. Behind the fallen wall of a former government building, Vrax ordered a full fallback to the inner district. Energy turrets, drone nests, shielded walls, all deployed around the last functional stronghold. Let them come, he hissed through bared fangs. Let the humans throw themselves into the grinder. Earth heard the challenge, and it answered. Not with more soldiers, but with names. Names the Grell didn't yet know, but would learn to fear. He fell from the sky like judgment. The drop pod pierced the atmosphere moments before dawn, carving a column of heat and light through the clouds. It struck the scorched ground outside the fortified Grell district with the force of a small meteor, shattering a line of enemy scouts before they could even register the impact. The hatch burst open with a hiss of steam. Out stepped Major Elias Rohr. Tall, broad-shouldered. His armor was jet black with streaks of dried blood, stains that no solvent had ever been able to clean. His face was stone-carved by years of war, a scar running from temple to jaw like a permanent sneer. He didn't speak as he emerged. He didn't have to. He was the kind of man whispered about in the dark corners of old Earth barracks. The kind they said once fought off a hive swarm with a broken rifle, a fractured collarbone, and the jawbone of a dead squad mate. The kind you sent when nothing else would work. Colonel Shaw met him in the ruins of a shattered temple, where the walls were still painted with blood and scorch marks. Didn't expect to see you, Rohr, she said, voice low. He cracked his neck. Didn't want to come back. Politics on Earth were cleaner than this mess. But command said you needed someone to break the wall. She nodded toward the city. They've mined every approach. Triple defense grids. Auto turrets. Heavy walkers at every gate. Rohr chuckled, deep and guttural. Sounds like a party. There was a pause. Heavy with shared memory. With unspoken names. Scars traded in different years, on different planets, but always under the same flag. You know, Shaw muttered. They say the Grell never retreat. War's expression didn't change. Then we'll teach them how. As Earth's presence on Kirin 9 grew, it became more than a military push. It became a movement. Dropships continued to fall through the sky, not just with more soldiers, but with engineers, medics, drone pilots, and resistance fighters from allied worlds. People who had no stake in this battle, but refused to let another innocent planet be crushed. In a makeshift hospital built from the remnants of a collapsed school, a human medic named Aisha Rami worked through the night, hands trembling with exhaustion as she stitched a Coronian child's leg back together. Her uniform was stained, her voice hoarse. The child opened his eyes, blinking. "You're not like the Grell." She smiled softly. "Neither are you." Outside, the winds began to shift. A low hum vibrated through the clouds. Static echoed across all frequencies. And from the deep black beyond the system's edge, 4 ships emerged, each one the size of a mountain, coated in etched red runes that pulsed like veins. The Warbringers. The Grell's most ancient weapons. Vessels of such catastrophic power they had only been deployed thrice in recorded history. They did not issue warnings. They did not parley. They opened fire. The first Earth destroyer vanished under a single beam, a hole carved straight through its core. The second tried to evade. Lasted 14 seconds. The UNS Nightfall, third in line, fought back. And it held. Torpedoes. Railguns. Drone swarms. Every weapon fired in perfect sequence. Long enough to cover the escape of over 200 Earth drop pods. Long enough to delay the inevitable. Long enough to matter. Shaw saw the glow in the upper atmosphere and knew what it meant. She ducked behind the wreckage of a downed Grell cruiser, blood still drying on her gauntlet. "They brought the Warbringers," she growled. Roar, beside her, just grinned. "Good. You're insane." "I'm human." All across the city, Earth forces moved into position. No more hit and runs. No more surgical strikes. Now it was war. The siege began in darkness. Not out of fear, but precision. Human squads advanced without fanfare, without shouting. They moved like clockwork. Every step timed. Every heartbeat a note in the rhythm of retribution. This wasn't about tactics anymore. It was about reminding the galaxy what humanity looked like when it bled and chose to fight anyway. Shaw crouched behind the mangled frame of a Grell tank, her visor flickering with readouts. Ahead lay the inner district, layers of shield walls, turret nests, neural landmines, and Grell soldiers dug in like ticks. At its center, the stronghold. Black, brutal, pulsing with stolen energy. She tapped her comms. "Roar, status." His voice came back low and steady. "Planted charges on West Generator. Give the word, and half their grid goes out like bad wiring." She gave a tight nod. Words given. The west side of the city erupted in fire. A boom like thunder and screaming glass. The sky bloomed with orange as the defense network on the western flank died in one colossal burst of feedback and flame. That was the signal. Earth surged. Not as a line, but as a storm. Some squads charged with shields raised and rifles blazing. Others crept through sewers, crawling beneath sensor nets. Drones spiraled overhead, dropping EMP clusters and flashbangs that painted the night with panic. Lieutenant Griggs grinned like a man at his own funeral. He led his team through a sewer vent, kicked open a hatch behind a turret nest, and yelled, "Peekaboo, ugly," before dropping a plasma grenade down the chute. The explosion rocked the sky. Shrapnel rained like metal confetti. The Grell were strong, but they weren't built for desperation. Humans were born in it. When the second barrier fell, this time shattered by 2 half-retired Martian pilots and rusted starfighters, the Grell finally began to panic. In the heart of the stronghold, Vrax watched the feeds go dark one by one. Fire. Screams. Static. Karek trembled. "They're breaking our lines." Vrax growled, claws tearing into the console. "No," he snarled. "They're eating them." And with a flick of his talon, he activated the final defense. A full lockdown. Walls rose. Automated turrets hissed to life. Even the corridors flooded with neurotoxins meant for non-Grell intruders. He thought it would hold. He still didn't understand who he was dealing with. Because Earth hadn't sent its worst. It had sent its last resort. And that meant the rules no longer applied. Through the burning atmosphere came a scream, not of a weapon, not of war, but of something far more dangerous. Knowledge. A single Earth dropship, its signature unrecognized by any manifest, tore through the upper sky at maximum velocity. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't tactical. It was deliberate. Inside sat Dr. Elia Vaughn, Earth's most dangerous war engineer. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't trained in combat. She didn't need to be. Vaughn wasn't sent to fight. She was sent to end things. Her silver hair was tied in a single braid, and one of her eyes had been replaced with an adaptive tactical lens years ago during the siege of Europa. The other eye burned with purpose. She held no weapon. She was the weapon. As the dropship slammed into the Grell stronghold's eastern wall, it detonated, not in a normal explosion, but in a controlled rupture of physics. A gravity bomb. Illegal under Earth's own wartime accords. The kind of thing that folds space the wrong way around itself. The wall didn't explode. It imploded, like a building being swallowed by an invisible fist. The breach it created wasn't a hole, it was an open wound. And Earth's forces surged through it like blood. Major Roar led the charge, twin repeaters in hand, his every step a calculated act of violence. He didn't yell. He didn't command. He simply moved, through the breach, through fire, through screaming Grell soldiers who couldn't understand how death had found them so quickly. No words. Just death and boots. The fight inside the stronghold was brutal. Corridors of burning metal. Gunfire in tight spaces. Blades in the dark. Humans didn't take ground with tactics. They took it by sheer, unyielding presence. They crashed into Grell formations like waves of teeth. Roar kicked down a reinforced door, rifle raised, only to find himself face to face with a towering Grell warlord, nearly 3 meters tall, encased in reactive armor, a creature bred for single-purpose annihilation. It swung first. Roar ducked, drove forward, and they collided like boulders. Metal screeched. Bone cracked. Fist struck like thunderclaps in tight stone halls. But Roar didn't slow. He fought like someone who had already buried every friend he ever had. Someone who had nothing left to fear. He stabbed upward, into the warlord's chestplate. Twisted. Leaned in. "This is for Europa," he whispered. The warlord fell. Not with glory. With shock. Across the stronghold, Earth's forces swept deeper. Final sweep, Shaw's voice called over comms. "Find Vrax. Find his command corps. No survivors." Outside, civilians watched as Earth's banner was raised, tattered, stained, but standing. And across its length, in old Terran script, the words, "No one left behind." From orbit, the Warbringers, those towering Grell ships, moved again. But this time, they didn't charge. They retreated. Not because they were ordered. Because, for the first time in centuries, the Grell knew fear. Smoke still curled through the shattered stronghold like the last breaths of a dying beast. The screams faded. The weapons quieted. But no one relaxed. Veteran soldiers knew one thing better than any strategy. It's never over until you find the body. Colonel Shaw pushed deeper into the ruins, boots grinding on glass and bone. Her HUD flickered with movement. Thermal scans pulsed red. "Something's lighting up down here," Roar's voice came through. "Too hot for standard defense notes. Meet at Central Nexus," she ordered. When they arrived, what they found wasn't a command center. It was something alive. The walls were no longer metal. They were organic, pulsing, breathing. In the center, a translucent pod suspended in blue liquid. Inside it, a figure floated, humanoid in shape, but wrong. Part Grell, part human. Ribs laced with bone and machine. A brain human, visible through a clear dome. Limbs fused with invasive tech. "Is that Vrax?" Shaw asked. Dr. Vaughn stepped closer, her voice flat. "No. It's worse." Griggs stared in horror. "They've been experimenting. They're building a hybrid," Vaughn confirmed. "Grell power. Human adaptability. They're trying to make something that wins." "This isn't a lab," Roar said, fist clenched. "It's a womb. And it's almost done," Vaughn added, scanning fast. "This thing isn't just a weapon. It's a prototype for a new species. One designed to beat us at everything." Shaw raised her rifle. "Not today." She fired. But the pod flickered. Vanished. A hum filled the chamber. The lights dimmed. And Vrax's voice came through every speaker. "You came too late," he rasped, filled with unnatural echo. "You think you've won. That you've broken us." The floor shook. "This was never the war," Vrax hissed. "This was the seeding." The room trembled. Vaughn's scanners pinged a signal deep beneath them. "A failsafe," she muttered. "Something buried." "Planet killer?" Griggs asked, stepping back. "No," Vaughn said, face pale. "Worse. A signal beacon. It's calling their true fleet. The Warbringers were scouts. This wakes up the real monsters." "Then we end it now," Shaw said. She turned to Roar. Handed him the detonator. "I go deep. You set it off when I reach the core. You think I'm letting you run into hell alone?" He snapped. "You don't outrank me," she replied. Roar stared at her. Jaw clenched. "I'll hate you for this." She gave a half smile. "I know." And then she ran into the tunnels alone. Alarms screamed in alien tongues. The stronghold pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't just sound, but a signal, a call. Above ground, something vast breached orbit. A ship with an old Earth signature. The UNS Requiem. A lost flagship, vanished decades ago. A voice echoed across every channel. "This is Admiral Hanavex. Reinforcements have arrived. And we're bringing the wrath of a dying world." Shaw, deep below, heard it through static. And she smiled. "Let's finish this." Beneath the ground, in the twitching, flesh-lined tunnels of the Grell stronghold, Colonel Marin Shaw moved like a shadow. Her boots crunched glass and bone. Her shoulder bled freely where armor had cracked. Her HUD flickered erratically, the comms growing more fragmented with every step into the depths. She was alone. No orders. No backup. Just a target, the signal beacon buried at the heart of this monstrous warren. It pulsed louder now. Not just a mechanical frequency, but something deeper. Organic. Psychic. It throbbed like a second heartbeat, echoing through the walls, vibrating her ribs. She descended. Above her, Earth's war machine howled back into the sky. The UNS Requiem, long thought lost in the void, rained kinetic judgment from orbit. Orbital lances carved trenches through Grell formations, melting armor and splitting stone. Earth's fleet, Patched, scarred, furious, had arrived not to save, but to punish. Admiral Hanavek's voice crackled across channels, calm as a tombstone. This is Earth. You attacked our friends. You played with our dead. You tried to become us. You don't get to walk away. The Grell fleet scattered, most ships attempting retreat, only to be hunted down by Martian interceptor wings, helmed by pilots who had waited years for payback. But below, the real war raged. Shaw entered the core chamber. It was wrong. So wrong. The walls pulsed with red light. Everything breathed. In the center stood a spire, 3 stories tall, glowing with electric blue veins. The beacon. It didn't just call for reinforcements. It was alive. A monolith constructed from bone and data. Brains, human, Grell, Coronian, wired into a central consciousness. It pulsed in time with a sound that wasn't sound at all. A scream embedded in the bones of the air. And then it spoke. Not aloud. In her head, images flooded Shaw's mind. Earth, burning. Her squad, dead. Her own hands, red with blood. Her sister's voice, long dead, whispered from inside the walls. You don't have to die, Marin. You can evolve. Join us. Let us. Shaw staggered. Dropped to one knee. The voice shifted, Roar's voice now. Her parents. Her own. Be more than a soldier. Be the future. Then something snapped. A familiar growl cut through the static. Shaw, you reading me? It was Roar. Don't do it. I found another way in. I can hit the power nodes from the surface, disable the beacon without a full collapse. Shaw blinked through tears of rage. The beacon pulsed harder, trying to drown the voice, screaming louder. They always leave you, it hissed. They always let you die. Shaw laughed. A raw, broken laugh. Yeah, she whispered. But he came back. She lifted her rifle and fired. The first node shattered. Sparks flew. The beacon shrieked audibly now. Flesh pulled away from walls. Lights flared to red. Above, Vaughn, Griggs, and a demolitions team breached the upper layer. Explosives went down. The plan changed on the fly. The mission stayed the same. Shaw screamed into the comm. Now, Roar. Hit the sequence. But it was too late. The pod in the center, empty before, twitched. From behind her, something moved. 9 feet tall. Flesh and armor fused. A hybrid. It wasn't Vrax. It was what Vrax had become. Human bones. Grell limbs. White-hot eyes. Something stolen from nightmares and forged in ego. You're the future? Shaw said, breathing hard. I am what humanity could have been if it weren't so flawed. It rasped. And then it lunged. The impact hurled Shaw across the chamber. Her ribs cracked. Blood filled her mouth. But she moved. She'd been in this place before. Not this room, but this moment. Alone. Hurt. And defiant. The hybrid struck like a predator, smashing through consoles and walls. It was strong. Fast. Efficient. But soulless. Shaw dodged, slid beneath its strike, drove a broken blade under its ribcage, fired 2 rounds into its throat, and screamed as it grabbed her by the neck and slammed her into the spire. Her armor fractured. Her body screamed. And then, Roar arrived. The wall blew open. He threw a sonic grenade, caught the hybrid mid-charge, and tackled it into a pillar. Metal shrieked. Fists flew. Blood, human and alien, spattered the walls. Shaw crawled forward, coughing. Roar shouted her name, tossed the detonator. She caught it, looked into the hybrid's human eyes, and whispered, "This is Earth's answer." Then she dropped the charge, and the world erupted. A white light. Total. Holy. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then, dust, falling like snow. Shattered fragments of the beacon drifted through the air, glowing as they died. Shaw stirred from beneath rubble, bruised, broken, bleeding, but alive. Roar, she rasped. You there? A groan. Then coughing. Then, hell of a punch. He crawled out from behind a crushed beam, his left arm limp and bloody. You owe me drinks. Shaw laughed, dry, broken, real. Only if we make it off this rock. Above, Earth forces punched through stone. Rescue signals pinged her HUD. She turned toward the rising light. They had won. They had survived. And then, a voice. Stand down, all fire. Repeat, stand down. Admiral Vex's voice. Sharp. Tense. A vessel just dropped out of FTL. Not Grell. Shaw frowned. Roar blinked. Another Earth ship? No, Vex said. Pre-Exodus code. Ancient signal. It's Terran. Silence. Then Shaw's voice, barely audible. That's not possible. They left 500 years ago. Yeah, Vex said. And now they're back. Outside, the ground trembled once more. Something massive landed beyond the city ruins. Energy readings off the charts. Familiar, yet wrong. Then a new transmission. A voice human, but empty. You interfered with genetic progression. You destroyed property essential to our species. Earth no longer speaks for all of humanity. Roar stared at the smoke. Who the hell are they? Shaw whispered. They're us. The version of us that never stopped evolving. And from the stars, the Terran Sea began to fall. And Kieran 9, saved only moments ago, started changing again. It began with a seed, not a weapon. Not a bomb. Just a single, obsidian sphere launched from the Terran ship, sleek and silent, descending like a judgment written in metal. It struck the ground at the heart of Kieran 9's ruined capital and didn't explode. It grew. Black tendrils erupted from the impact site, twisting into the fractured stone, slithering through ash, crawling across the corpses left by the battle. They pulsed with a strange blue glow, mechanical, yet alive, like vines woven from memory and machinery. And then, the dead began to change. Grell corpses twitched. Their bones cracked and twisted. Flesh tore and reshaped. Metal wrapped around limbs like vines. Eyes, once glassy and lifeless, lit up with a soft white glow. They were not reanimating. They were being rewritten. Across the battlefield, human forces froze in horror as enemy corpses began to stand. Not groaning. Not stumbling. Marching. Fast. Coordinated. Perfect. Were fired into one a headshot. It dropped. Then got up again. With a new face. A new design. Shaw screamed into comms. Pull back. All units. Fall to fallback zone Delta. Now. It was too late for some. Earth's medics, engineers, soldiers, those who had just celebrated a hard-won victory, were now trapped between the past and an impossible future. On the deck of the UNS Requiem, Admiral Vex stood silent, staring at the expanding network on her tactical readouts. They're terraforming, she whispered. In real time. Genetic warfare on a planetary scale. Dr. Vaughn's voice crackled over comms. They're not just altering DNA, they're overriding evolution. Turning the battlefield into a breeding ground. Target? Vex asked. Everything, Vaughn replied. Every inch the seed touched reshaped the world. Metal growing over stone, flora absorbing machine code, the sky itself turning darker, denser. This wasn't invasion. This was correction. And from the Terran ship above, a smaller vessel detached. Sleek. Silent. It landed just outside the city, amid the blackened soil and twitching corpses. From within stepped a figure. Humanoid. Human-sized. Wrapped in a bodysuit of living metal that pulsed with information. Its skin was too perfect. Its posture unnatural. Its voice flawless. I am Prime Representative Helix. Terran Ascendancy. You've interfered with a controlled restoration. Shaw and Roar stood at the breach perimeter, rifles raised, squads arrayed behind them. Shaw took a step forward. You're rewriting the dead. Helix didn't blink. We are preserving viable designs. Your species discarded them. We recycle. This world called for help, she growled. You weren't invited. Helix tilted its head. You offered chaos. We offer order. Precision. Purpose. Roar raised his rifle. You came here to threaten Earth? No. We came to correct it. You've regressed. Wars, factions, tribalism. Humanity was meant for unity. Now we restore it. Through death. Shaw spat. Through transformation. And behind Helix, the rewritten Grell rose in coordinated silence, hundreds of them, linked by invisible threads, eyes empty, bodies perfected. You built an army from corpses, were muttered. You made them clean. Efficient. But you forgot the one thing that makes us human. Helix blinked slowly. Witches. Shaw stepped forward. Her voice low. Final. We resist. She fired. The shot slammed into Helix's chest. It staggered, not killed, but shocked. And the entire battlefield erupted. The hybrid Grell charged. The Terran ship above activated weapon grids. And in orbit, Admiral Vex whispered into her comms. Deploy Black Rain. Ma'am, that's... Do it. Project Black Rain, a kinetic orbital bombardment system banned after the Pluto Accords. A weapon of last resort. This was that moment. From the Requiem's underbelly, a single rod, longer than a skyscraper and heavier than a city, dropped from orbit. Target. The seed. Shaw and Roar ducked behind a barricade, dragging wounded with them, as the sky above cracked open. The hybrids surged. Terran ships fired. But Earth soldiers didn't retreat. They held. Engineers picked up rifles. Pilots crashed broken ships into enemy formations. Medics bled alongside commandos. And as the ground split and the kinetic rod screamed down, Shaw whispered, "This is for the ones who had no voice." Impact. White. Blinding. Eternal. The Earth screamed. Buildings folded. Hybrids evaporated mid-charge. The seed shattered into fragments, its network severed, its roots burned into molten ash. The Terran ship buckled under EMP wash. Cloaking fields failed. Their silence collapsed. One by one, their systems failed. They began to retreat. The rewritten dead fell again, lifeless, this time. When the dust cleared, nothing remained of the seed. Just scorched stone. Dead steel. And a battlefield too quiet. But Kieran 9 still stood. Burned. Broken. Free. Shaw collapsed beside Roar, her body bruised, lungs full of ash. He reached for her, groaning. "Remind me," he said. "Next time someone asks for help, we send cookies instead." Shaw smiled through cracked lips. "Next time, we bring more." Above them, the sky began to clear. And across the stars, a new message began to spread. Not from the Terran Ascendancy. Not from the Grell. But from Earth. We do not evolve through perfection. We evolve through resistance. And we are not finished. The battle for Kieran 9 was over. But its echoes had only begun. Across the known galaxy, systems lit up with chatter, fragmented, frantic, fearful. From the commercial holonets of neutral merchant worlds to the encrypted comm channels of black site military bunkers, one word pulsed across every relay. Terran. Not Terran as in human, but Terran as in other. Forgotten. Lost. Ascended. And Earth, bleeding, limping, breathless, had beaten them. Not with superior technology. Not with evolved soldiers. But with chaos. With defiance. With humanity. On the orbital deck of the UNS Requiem, Admiral Vex stood before a shattered holomap. The enemy Terran vessel had slipped into retreat, veiled again in its cloaking field, wounded, not destroyed. But the seed was gone. The hybrid wave ended. The signal silenced. For now. They'll be back, she muttered. Dr. Vaughn leaned against the railing, one eye bruised, the other glowing softly from her tactical implant. Of course they will, she said. They think we're broken. Vex didn't smile. Then we'll show them what broken things do when you try to cage them. Down on the surface, Kieran 9 smoldered. Entire cities had been scarred, some irreparably. Streets that once sang with art and celebration now echoed only the low hum of emergency power grids and the shuffle of survivors. But there was life. Children emerged from shelters. Volunteers dug through rubble with bare hands. A Coronian elder stood beside a human medic, both covered in ash, both smiling. Hope, beaten bloody, was still standing. Colonel Shaw sat on a field crate beside Major Roar, her leg in a brace, her face half-bandaged, sipping recycled water like it was whiskey. Think they got the message? Roar asked. She exhaled slowly. They'll never forget it. Yeah, but now we've got a new problem. She nodded. The Terrans weren't just some splinter group. They were ancient. Forgotten descendants of Earth's earliest voyages, those that left the cradle before unification, before the Terran Accord, before the wars that shaped modern humanity. Everyone thought they died in the outer void. They hadn't. They'd survived. Alone. And in that isolation, they had rewritten what it meant to be human. No emotion. No dissent. No soul. Just function. And now they'd returned, not as saviors, but as correctors. Aboard the Requiem, Earth Command gathered remotely. Generals, scientists, historians. No one knew what to call this threat. But in dark corners of space, the whispers already had a name. The return. Some called it prophecy. Others called it punishment. But most simply called it inevitable. Back on Earth, the images went viral before the censors could lock them down. Footage of Terran hybrids. The seed's growth. Helix's speech. Shaw's final stand. And the last image, the banner above Kieran 9's burned capital. No one left behind. Across civilian networks, hashtags and slogans appeared. We are Earth. We resist perfection. Remember Kieran. For the first time in a century, enlistment spiked not because of glory, but because of belief. People had seen what awaited them if they did nothing. People saw what almost replaced them. And they weren't going to let that happen. Across neutral worlds, alliances shifted. Old enemies of Earth started reaching out, not to sue for peace, but to ask for cooperation. If they tried to overwrite you, a Draken ambassador told the Accord, how long before they overwrite us? In the hidden cities of Mars, war-thought AI stirred from hibernation. On Europa, long-abandoned bunkers blinked online. In the asteroid fields near Pluto, old black sites began transmitting on forgotten frequencies. Earth wasn't planning a war. It was remembering how. Somewhere beyond the known systems, deep in Terran space, Helix stood aboard a cathedral-like vessel. Cold. Silent. Perfect. Below him, rows of new hybrid soldiers stood in containment. Grell. Human. Other. Behind him, the void pulsed. A silent transmission flickered across his internal feed. Status. Seed destroyed. Opposition. Unexpected. Resistance level. Unacceptable. Adaptation required. Helix turned toward the void, his voice unreadable. They're not ready to evolve. Then we will make them bleed. But back on Kieran 9, as the smoke finally began to clear, Shaw stood before a crowd of wounded survivors and soldiers. She was no longer just a colonel. She was a symbol. A soldier who had stood before monsters born of man and machine and said no. Ruth stood beside her. Dr. Vaughn, wounded but smiling, watched from a nearby platform. As the crowd quieted, Shaw spoke into the battered microphone. No rhetoric. No anthem. Just a truth. They came to rewrite us. But we are not code. We are not files to be patched. We are memory. We are fire. We are flawed, and we choose to be. Because perfection without choice isn't humanity. It's slavery. The crowd didn't cheer. They roared. And far above, in a sky that had once belonged to the Grell, then to the Terrans, Earth's banner flew again. Singed. Torn. But alive. The banner hung limp in the breeze, half-burned, soot-stained, but still standing. It was not just fabric. It was defiance. It was memory. It was the promise of Earth. In the days that followed, the survivors of Kieran 9 began to rebuild, not from comfort, but from conviction. What the Grell had tried to erase, and what the Terrans had tried to overwrite, humanity and its allies would carve back into being. Colonel Shaw walked the broken streets with a slow, uneven stride. Her leg hadn't fully healed, but she refused exosupport. The pain kept her present, kept her human. She passed crews rebuilding shelters from rubble, children painting flames and stars on walls scorched by plasma. One of them looked up and whispered, "Is it true? You shot the perfect man?" Shaw paused, then smiled, not kindly, but like someone who'd just been reminded the universe still had bite. He bled just like anyone else. Across the planet, signals were re-established. Aid poured in, not just from Earth, but from old rivals, former enemies, and unaffiliated systems. All of them had seen what nearly happened. All of them had felt the pulse of Terran perfection. And all of them had reached the same conclusion. If Earth falls, the rest of us are next. The Accord reconvened under emergency mandate, not out of bureaucratic habit, but out of something rarer, fear. Representatives from 20 systems stood in silence as Admiral Vex addressed the chamber via holofeed. "We didn't just fight off a fleet," she said, voice low. "We fought off the future they had planned for us. We need to unify," a Draken delegate insisted. "Form a wall of resistance." "And then what?" a Hestari ambassador asked. "Fight them where? We don't even know where they came from." Dr. Vaughn answered before Vex could. "We don't need to find them yet," she said. "We just need to make sure they remember. If they come again, they will have to earn every inch." No one disagreed. Earth didn't seek war, but it would not run from it either. In a declassified briefing, the UNS command announced Project Emberlight, a multinational initiative to resurrect and modernize ancient war doctrines, reactive AI systems, and black site defense nodes. Beneath Mars ice, sleeper fleets were unfrozen. In orbit over Ganymede, orbital railnet satellites began to flicker with power not used in centuries. On Earth, an entire generation woke up to the terrifying realization that peace had not been permanent. It had merely been a pause. And now the pause was over. In a field hospital overlooking the crater where the seed had fallen, Shaw sat beside Roar. His arm was still in a sling, and he hadn't stopped complaining about the taste of military rations. "You know what I miss?" he asked, squinting into the sunset. "If you say cigarettes again, I swear." "No. Music. The kind with real strings, not synth beats. Something flawed. Beautiful." Shaw nodded slowly. "Yeah. Imperfection. Real notes played by real hands." Roar tilted his head. "Think we'll survive the next time?" She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "I don't know. But I know what we'll do." He waited. "We'll fight. We'll bleed. We'll adapt. And when the smoke clears, we'll either be dead, or we'll have reminded the galaxy one more time who we are." He smiled. "That's the Earth I remember." Nearby, a Coronian child placed a painted stone at the foot of the crater. On it, a crude drawing of a human and an alien holding hands beneath a shattered sky. Above them, the stars began to shift. The Terran ascendancy wasn't gone. It was watching. And across distant systems, black ships pulsed to life. One in particular, Prime Helix's cruiser, hovered in the void, systems recalibrating, memory cores updating. Helix stood before a suspended schematic of Earth. It rotated slowly. Perfectly. Too perfectly. "Too much variance," he said aloud. His second, less evolved and more mechanically bound, hissed. "The anomaly?" "Not anomaly," Helix corrected. "Core deviation. Resistance through imperfection." He reached toward the projection. "And now we test the rest." Behind him, rows of new seed pods lit up, each designated for a different system, each encoded with stronger override routines. But one was different. Its case was darker, thicker, marked with a symbol that hadn't existed before the Battle of Kirin 9. "The Earth Delta." "It learned," Helix murmured. "So will we." Back on Kirin 9, Shaw walked alone to the edge of the crater. She knelt, picked up the painted stone the child had left, and turned it in her hand. Then she placed it in her pocket. Because war might come again. Perfection might rise again. But when it did, it wouldn't find a fractured world waiting. It would find a world that remembered, that chose its scars, that bled for its freedom, that stood in the ashes and grinned. Years later, in a classroom orbiting New Corin on the edge of Allied space, a teacher stood before a group of children, human, alien, hybrid alike. They sat in a semicircle, wide-eyed, curious. Behind her, a hologram hovered, the surface of Kirin 9, before and after the battle. "Today's lesson is history," the teacher said gently, "but not the kind written by victors. The kind that survived." One child raised a hand. "Is it true they brought the dead back to life?" The teacher nodded. "They tried. But what they built wasn't life. It was control." Another child, a young Hestari with bioluminescent skin, whispered, "And Earth stopped them?" The teacher smiled. "Earth reminded them." She walked over to the console and played the transmission, the one that every system had heard, the one encoded in over 50 languages and broadcast from every border station since the war. Shaw's voice. "We are not perfect. We never were. But we bleed for each other. We fight for what cannot be measured. You call it illogical. We call it worth it. If that's weakness, then weakness is our greatest strength." The children sat in silence as the words faded. On a forgotten moon in Terran space, a wolfworm stood amid the remains of an old Grell colony. Its core pulsed with Terran code. Its eyes scanned the dust and decay. No enemies. No resistance. No growth. The form turned away. Transmission. Paused. Evaluation. Insufficient variance. Elsewhere, On Earth, a new academy opened, the Imberlite Initiative, named after the orbital strike that saved Kirin 9. It was not a military academy. It was a place where humans and aliens trained together, not just to fight, but to understand. Where strategy met empathy. Where scars became lessons. In the rebuilt corridors of the UNS Requiem, Admiral Vex sat in silence, listening to an old song played with real strings, her eyes closed, fingers tapping to an imperfect beat. And on Kirin 9, the crater had become a monument. At its center, a single stone. Not grand, not polished, painted by a child. Two figures holding hands. Beneath it, the inscription. We are not here to dominate the stars. We are here to remind them what it means to stand. Earth. The Terran ascendancy would come again. But now they would find something they didn't understand. A galaxy that had seen perfection. And chosen something better.